I would like to briefly go over hepatic circulation and fetal circulation so that we can have those for the upcoming exam. We talked about how when blood enters the areas such as the spleen, pancreas, stomach, those areas, before the blood is brought back to the inferior vena cava, it goes through the liver. So really, your liver has two sources of blood flow. So it does have direct flow from a branch of the celiac artery, the hepatic artery, that feeds those tissues, which then goes to the hepatic vein and the inferior vena cava. But here, if you notice the others, these areas, once blood has been withdrawn from those areas and those capillary beds, moves into those venules and enters an area called the hepatic portal vein, delivers blood to the liver to be filtered, to metabolize, to regulate the concentration of nutrients, toxins, wastes, etc. So we've kind of talked about that. Think about why blood from the stomach, intestines, spleen, why you would want that to go to the liver first to be filtered before it enters the heart. And think about how important it would be to control certain amounts of nutrients, to control certain amounts of wastes, and to remove toxins before you put that right into your heart. So here, this is a cadaveric dissection showing you, here if you can see the celiac trunk from the abdominal aorta branches to form the common hepatic, which would feed your liver, splenic, and that branches down. And of course, we have superior mesenteric feeding some of those intestines, and then lower intestines fed through inferior mesenteric. Once that material has moved to the capillary beds, once the blood has gone there, it's then going to flow back to the hepatic portal vein and enter the liver. And so this hepatic portal system is sort of a detour for blood from the GI tract to enter and to be filtered and metabolized before going back to the inferior vena cava, before going back to the heart. So that's really important to remember, really important to understand. So for this upcoming exam, I want you to know what the hepatic portal system is. It's called a portal because you're not going from capillary bed to heart. You're going from capillary bed to secondary capillary bed and then to the heart. And so they refer to that as a portal system. You have few in your body, but the hepatic, the liver, is one that I would like you to be aware of. And so just kind of understand that blood coming from your intestines, the mesenteric veins, as well as the spleen, stomach, etc., that feeds to the hepatic portal vein, goes back to the liver, and then the inferior vena cava. And so there are really two capillary bed systems here. One, of course, the liver itself, blood feeding to the liver, those tissues receiving oxygen, picking up carbon dioxide and wastes and going back to the inferior vena cava, as well as the capillary beds feeding into the hepatic portal vein here that goes to the liver first. So please take some time and look at that, understand that. So the liver itself is receiving blood from that celiac artery, or really hepatic artery. It's a branch of the celiac here, of course, splenic as well, and gastric. That moves to the liver, as well as blood from these capillary systems into that portal vein into the liver first. So areas of the inferior mesenteric, superior mesenteric, as well as gastric merge here to form the hepatic portal vein. Again, showing you a schematic, sort of an arrow line diagram showing you that, of course, the liver is receiving its own blood. Those tissues receive its own blood, of course, but as well as blood from mesenteric veins, hepatic portal vein, metabolized. And then, of course, back to the inferior vena cava. The fetus, we've talked a little bit how the fetus would have a different system. There are a few things that when you are a developing fetus, you need blood to go, one, straight to the liver, head, and neck as soon as you can. And your lungs, kidneys, and digestive tract aren't working as functionally as they are when you are, if you're born, when you're an adult, or when you're a child. And so there are certain areas where blood bypasses. You know, it's not that it doesn't go there. It's just you don't have to worry about the pulmonary system of getting the blood to the lungs to be oxygenated. The placenta is taking care of that. And so oxygen and waste are processed by maternal organs, gas exchange happens at the placenta. And so the fetal circulation is just getting blood to all of the tissues. So there are a few bypass areas that I need you to know. So here, if we could picture this as the placenta where gas exchange is occurring through the tissues of the mother and the fetus, there are two umbilical arteries wrapped around the umbilical cord. Two umbilical arteries here. The umbilical arteries carry blood to the placenta, pick up oxygen. They're carrying blood away from the fetal heart. So it's away from the fetal heart to the placenta, pick up blood, and then one large umbilical vein brings that blood back to the fetus. And so here, where your belly button is, where the umbilical cord was attached, here you see these umbilical arteries, two of them, either side here of the bladder, bringing deoxygenated, or at least low oxygen blood, back to the placenta for that gas exchange to occur. And then the umbilical artery brings that blood back to the fetus. So there's two umbilical arteries, one large umbilical vein. Now look here, this goes behind the umbilicus, up here to feed into areas of the liver, feed into areas here into the circulation. This is not there in an adult. As you age, it becomes a ligament, the ligamentum teres, the round ligament. But we don't need that, right? We don't have to bypass areas and bring blood straight to the liver first. Like that's not important. Well, I shouldn't even say not important, really. That's just not the mechanism. You don't have blood from a placenta. Your heart takes care of it once your heart and lungs are taking care of that once you're born. And so here's a better body plan to kind of show some differences here. I said two arteries, one veining. Look at this schematic. And so the two arteries are carrying this low oxygen blood to the placenta, one vein carrying it back. You see this bypass here? How it kind of bypasses and goes to the liver, bypasses here into this circulation. This is not present in an adult. You have your inferior vena cava bringing blood back, and you have your hepatic veins, of course, but you don't have this bypass you're not receiving oxygen from the behind the belly button. So that's not something that's needed. And so it becomes ligamentous. But there are a few others. So here, there's a spot in the heart, the foraminal valve, where blood can flow between the two atria. That closes up upon birth. There's the ductus arteriosus that allows blood to go from the arch of the aorta into this pulmonary system. You know, that closes up because you need your blood to be forced from the right ventricle to the lungs, and that to empty back into the left atria. You don't need the situation where it would go from left ventricle here to lungs as well as to the arch of the aorta. That's not necessary. And so that sort of fuses and becomes a ligament. As well as down here, some of the arteries become the ligaments of the bladder. And then of course that umbilical vein we talked about becomes this ligamentum teres. So the umbilical vein branches. One branch joins the hepatic portal vein to the liver. The other bypasses the liver to give blood as quickly as it can to areas of the body. It's called the ductus venosus. Here's the umbilical artery up this direction, and that is going to become a ligament in the adult. Ligamentum venosum in adults. So again, a schematic just kind of showing you that one more time. These areas of bypass are important for fetal circulation, but not in an adult. That's what the lungs and heart are for in that situation. And so blood from the ductus venosus goes to the inferior vena cava, to the right atrium, mixes with that deoxygenated blood. The right atrium here is the part of the heart to receive most of the oxygen quickly. And that blood can go directly across to the left side of the heart or up the pulmonary system and then to the arch. And so trying to get it to as many of these tissues as possible. So in the fetal heart, blood is flowing from the right atria to the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. Most blood flows through the duct to the aorta itself, called the ductus arteriosum. Again, I said that's going to close up in an adult, but that blood goes directly to the aorta. About 6 weeks after birth, this is going to close and fuse and become the ligamentum arteriosum. Again, you don't need that bypass. The hole in the heart between the two atria, the foramen ovale, that's going to fuse as well, become the fossa ovalis. But this is allowing some blood to move quickly between the right atria and the left atria without needing to go through all of the circulation first, because the lungs won't be functioning as a pumping system. So you won't have to worry about blood going to the lungs and then to the left atria like you would in an adult. So that foramen ovale becomes the fossa ovalis. And so I would like you to be aware, 2 arteries, 1 vein. Please understand the different structures, the different bypasses in the liver, as well as the heart, the 2 in the heart, and know what they become in the adult or in the developing child. All that blood that went to the aorta goes to the internal iliac arteries, which, as you can see here, follow this pathway. It's going to, perfuse all these tissues, but be brought back to low oxygen blood, not fully deoxygenated, but low oxygen blood, back to the placenta for more gas exchange. So this is happening all the time through the placenta to make sure that you're getting as much oxygen as necessary to all of these tissues and nutrients as well. And then umbilical. Here's just a picture showing you the umbilical arteries become that lateral umbilical ligaments of the urinary bladder, either side of the bladder there, and attached to the back of the umbilicus, where they used to go out to the placenta. So some things are circled here in the fetal circulation. Again, please be aware of that. Understand what is different, spend some time with it, break it down. I always say start simple, right? Look at foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus, the ductus venosus, the 1 umbilical vein, 2 umbilical arteries. Figure out the differences first, and then figure out what changes occur after birth, what changes occur after that first breath of oxygen has taken place. As lungs begin to pump, the digestive system begins to work in ways that it did not when you were inside of when the baby was inside of the mother. And so that first breath results in reduced pressure to the right side of the heart. You get aeration of lungs. You immediately start making more of those alveolar cells that can perform that gas exchange. Pressure is reduced in the thorax when you inhale. Blood pressure falls in the inferior vena cava, and this decrease in oxygen may begin to cause closure of that ductus arteriosum and initiate closure of some of those other ducts that will become ligaments. And so we'll pick back up there in lecture. So go back through, make sure you understand hepatic portal circulation and then fetal circulation and the differences that occur before and after birth. Let me know if there are any questions in the meantime. Happy studying this weekend.